Welcome to the F50 Woman Podcast, dedicated to sharing stories from a diverse community of women in order to provoke you into a passionate pursuit of life, build unshakable character, and achieve extraordinary things. Now, here is your host, Julia Jack.
The oldest of three children, she was a spoiled daddy's girl who loved sports. As a young girl, her parents ensured that she was always productive. They kept her active, and she was always pushed to lead. Unbeknownst to her, all of that would ripen her into the leader she is today. And today, she's an HR executive, a pastor, a business owner, a writer, and a public speaker, a leader on every one of her life stages, at her job, in her business, spiritually, personally, and professionally. Come in and listen and hear how she does it all. This is Maxine Johnson's story. Always pushing to be her best, she is one energetic, insightful, wise, and powerfully humble F50 woman. Hey, F50 women, thank you so much for joining us today. Today I'm here with Maxine Johnson. Maxine is a wife and mother, and she has a long history of leadership roles, both professionally and as an experienced pastor. I'm tripping over my tongue this morning. I don't know why. Maxine is an author, co-author, certified life coach, and a transformation specialist for women who are ready to take their lives to the next level. And I'm so into that. That's exactly what we want to do here. She is the CEO and founder of Wife Boss Academy, where she helps women who are in a position of power obtain clarity, confidence, and influence in both of those areas. I am so excited that you're here, Maxine, and welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Julia. It's great to be here. I appreciate the opportunity.
So we just want to know how you got to where you are. So let's start from when you were a young woman. Tell us about who you were, what you were like, what you wanted to be when you got bigger.
Yeah. So as a young woman, growing up, it was my brother and I have two siblings, but at that time, it was just my younger brother and I. I'm the oldest of three. And my parents, I grew up in pretty much a middle-class family, and my mom was in pathology and my father worked for our local transportation company. And I will say I was a daddy's girl and I was spoiled. So I was involved in community early on. I was involved in sports, primarily track and field, cross country. And the winter months, I would do cheerleading and indoor track. And it's funny because my parents always wanted us to stay busy. So that was very important to them, that we stay busy and I'll say more so productive, meaning that I was involved in activities that had opportunities for discipline and things of that nature. So I've been pretty much active, I'll say as a little girl, from ballet to, I never took any type of music. I always wanted to sing. But
Me too.
That wasn't my gift. That's not my gift. And my husband tells me, no, stop. That's not your gift.
Okay.
And I always wanted to sing. And but the one thing I did have an opportunity from doing that and being so active, but it always evolved, meaning that, so you start as a little girl being a ballerina and, you want to be a ballerina, and then it evolved being a cheerleader and that from all of that. But one thing that I saw that was common through all of that was, for some reason, even though I didn't see it, I was always put to the front. So they were like, you should try out for the captain of the cheerleading team. I'm like, why? So I'm from Philadelphia. I'm born and raised in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And there's a theater, Freedom Theater. So I'm an alumni of Freedom Theater. I think Erica Alexander went there who was Max. So I remember even going there and being a part of the big recitals, and they're like, okay, we want to put you in the front. And I'm like, why? And so I say all that to say that how it all evolved and how it all came to be, even though I never felt comfortable being in the forefront, I never felt comfortable being in front of people. I never felt comfortable being on stage, but that's where I've always been pushed. So when I look back over my life, I'm thinking, here I am as, I'm an HR leader by trade. That's what I do. And that's my background. I have over 20 years of HR experience.
Nice.
I'm a pastor. I have my own business. I coach women. I do speaking events. And here I am in front of people, leading, guiding. And now when I look back, I'm thinking that's where God was setting me up the entire time.
Yes. Yeah. Whether you wanted it or not, that he had a plan the whole time. Yes.
Exactly.
What do you think it was about you? And this is not arrogance. I just want to know, because there are characteristics or there's something, of course, it was God's plan, so we don't want to take him out of it.
That's right.
But I'm also wondering, what do you think it was about you, or how you showed up, or what do you think they saw in you that they said, hey, you should be in the front?
And this is, hindsight is always 2020, right?
Yes.
So one thing I do know is that I always wanted to do things right. I always wanted to do my best. I always wanted to be my best, because I didn't want to hear it from my coach. I didn't want my coaches, my teachers. I just didn't want any drama. So the biggest thing is to downplay or have no drama is to do it right the first time, or as close to it. The great side of that is people see the best in you, and they think they want you to lead, because they're like, if you're doing your best, you can help others to do their best.
Yeah.
The downside is as you grow up, you become a perfectionist. And that gets in the way of a lot of things. So I think that looking back, that a lot of it is like, I wanted to do right. I wanted to be the best at what I did. So if they're like, that move is wrong or this move is wrong, I was like, okay, what do I need to do to get better? Even though I ran track, I look back, I wasn't like the all-star athlete as a track person, but the one thing I always said, do your best and never come in last.
Right.
So it was those type of things I think that people saw in me that I'll say, honestly, Julia, I didn't necessarily see in myself.
Okay. Yeah. That we should emulate, no matter how old we get. I like to emphasize, we should emulate doing your best. And especially for the millennials, I don't know, my son hates when I call them out, call the millennials out, but just do your best. It's not about being the richest, the prettiest, the whateverist, but about doing your best in what you can do.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing.
There's no regrets. When you said, did I give everything that I got? Did I give all that I had? And certain things, like I look at my track career in quotes, but I didn't give my best. So it was just like, okay, beat the last person. But when it came to practice, I didn't work out hard. I was just like, okay, I'm here. I'm showing up. It's hard.
Yeah.
So I don't have to do. But what I see is that when you give your best, there's no regrets.
Yes.
None whatsoever.
You want to live a regret-less life, you have to give your best 100%.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I love that. So I'm wondering, HR and being a pastor, how do they link up? Do they link up? What do they have in common? How do they transfer? It feels like they're both transferable because you're dealing with people and their issues and their challenges and their needs. So just share that a little bit. I'm interested. Yeah,
that's a great question. I will say, when I first got into the pastorate, I used to really try to separate it.
Yeah.
And, I'm a brand new pastor, and I'm just focusing on the church, and I'm focusing on the spirituality of the congregants, preparing Bible study, preparing for Sunday service, or anything else that's in need. But we know that in churches, you also have that administrative component, and the administrative component comes into that. And when I got to my second church, and I remember I started dealing with some things that was very similar to what I dealt with in the workplace. Yeah. And my husband said to me so clearly, stop taking off the HR hat when you go into church. Yeah. It's the same. Yeah. And when I thought about it, this is something that I do when I talk about transferable skills as an HR leader. That's all I talk about when I coach women and women that says, I don't know where to go. Well, that's transferable. And how do you draw out those transferable skills? Here I wasn't practicing what I promoted, right?
Yeah.
So when my husband said that to me, I said, yes, conflict resolution is huge.
Yes.
Change management is huge.
Yes.
You're a brand new pastor. You're coming into this church. They're like, who are you?
Yes.
And then you're developing teams. So ministry, if you have new ministries, it's developing teams. It's all of that stuff transfers. And so when you start thinking about, I forget the model's name, but when you talk about developing teams, it's like 4 stages. It's like forming, storming, norming, and performing.
Yes.
And I had to learn that as I went through, and I'm thinking and I know God was all in it, but he enlightened me to say, you do this all the time.
Yeah.
Because I work with, and from an HR capacity, I work with chief scientific officers. I work with chief surgeons, people that are like internationally known, and they're asking me questions about how to better get their enterprise or their departments or divisions, how to make them better. And I'm thinking, if I'm doing that there, it's a transferable skill. Just what I share with them is what I can do and what I have been doing in the church. So the aha moment came probably about 5 or 6 years ago when my husband said, don't take the hat off.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It can go both ways.
It does. Absolutely.
And your pastoring comes into your work, I imagine.
Yes. And that was one thing I was going to say, Julia, because, when I said I really tried to separate it, I really did.
Yeah.
And at the time, my vice president found out. She knew I was pastoring because I asked for an accommodation, if you will, to leave work early because my church at that time was about 2 hours away. Okay. And so when it was Bible study, I got permission to leave work early so that I can have Bible study. But it started to spread, people started to find out. But what I found out was during my performance reviews, my leader at the time would say, here are some things that you can do, or here are some things, and she would share that. But what I think from a perspective of business, she was not as open to or knowledgeable about what I did. So what I shared with her was, I do church administration. Like, this is another big part. So what happened, the things that I did in the church, such as budgeting, what I did in the church as far as change management, what I did in the church as far as so many other things. She's like, I didn't realize you did all that. Yes. So I'm really, I'm not downplaying the spirituality of the church, right? But I'm still running a business, and I'm the person. I'm responsible for all of that. And so even though you learn to delegate, you learn to have people that you identify their strengths, things that I'm not good at, or it's going to take too long. People people will do. Yeah. And so all of those things have been transferred over into the HR world. And so it has gone both ways, which has made it such a blessing. And I think that's what makes that's what I thank God for all the time. It makes me unique, because I really tried to separate it, but he's like, no, this is what makes you unique. This is what makes it all beautiful. And so I'm so grateful to him for that.
Nice. And how does your actual ministering show up at work? Because oftentimes, at least for me, they're both separate. But how do you work that difference? Because sometimes if you have a really big conflict, you almost want to say, listen, God is in control, that kind of thing. So how does that show up for you?
Well, I will say the Holy Spirit, he truly helped. The Holy Spirit helps me quite, like when you talk about relying not on your own self, it has really been helpful. Okay. So what has worked for me is God, the gift of discernment and having discernment. Yeah. Because I would still stay in that HR leader role, right? Okay. The part about me is, and I'm not saying if you're a Christian and you curse, I'm downplaying you. I don't. Right. What I'm saying is I don't curse. So people will say, you don't even curse. You don't say anything. What makes you different? That's an open door. Like, what keeps you going? That's an open door. And I'll say prayer, laughter, and relaxation. And so that opens that door. Or if I have someone that says to me, and this has happened numerous times, where I had an employee who said they got in trouble and it was their fault, but they didn't want to admit it. And they say, well, you know what? I don't even care because God is in control. And I said, you know what? You're right. But
you open the door.
You
Yeah,
open
they
the
open
door,
the door.
and I go right in because we serve a God of order.
Yeah.
He's in
right.
decency and in order. And a part of decency and in order is I think he will want you to come to work on time and not make excuses. And so those type of things. Or another, it's so many, but another one was I had a woman who I had to sit down and give her severance agreement after being in the workplace for 20 years. And it's always hard. It's really hard. That's what, the human side of you shows up. And that's when you say, okay, I'm still human, because people can get callous to all of this, right?
Yeah.
And what she said to me was, this must really be hard for you. And I said, it is. And this is what she said. Do you mind if I pray for you? Well, by the end of the day, the end of the whole meeting, we were crying and we were praying and we prayed for each other. Wow. And so I allowed them to open the door. And once they do, that's where ministry comes into the workplace.
Okay. And you don't hesitate. You walk right in the door.
Yeah. You give me a crack. I'm shining that light in there.
Yeah. I like that. So let's jump over some of those big lessons in between and tell us about you now. What do you do now? Just give us that piece of you.
Yeah. So there's so many lessons.
Yeah.
So many lessons. And one of the biggest things that I have learned over the course of the years is that I know that I'm an overcomer. And God has been with me through the whole time. Okay. And I was a teenage mom. I got married, a teenage bride, and it was rough. It was tough, and separated, divorced early, and overcame it. We are overcomers. And so one thing that I learned is that whatever I know about myself, in each instance, is so many different things that I've dealt with, that I've been through, that each time that when I really focused on what I wanted, or saw that goal, or saw the vision and walked in it, or saw myself, and death and life is in the power of the tongue, whatever I spoke, whatever I thought, that when I focused on it, it came to pass. And everything. So for instance, when I always say I didn't drop out of college, I took a sabbatical because I had, right?
Yes.
And I would say that, I didn't drop out, I took a sabbatical. But one thing I learned about that was I would always just see myself walking across the stage, getting my degree. And I did. Okay. I always saw myself, or when I went back and got my master's degree, my first master's degree, I used to write out Maxine Johnson MBA. I would just write it out, and it came to pass. And so all of those things that I say that I've learned lessons is that whatever I put my mind to, or whatever I focus on, is like, how bad do you want it? Yeah. And I will always pray. And once I really, built my relationship up with God, I will always ask God, if this isn't for me, if this is not for me, just take it out. Because, I talk just like this to God. Listen, God, if this ain't for me, just take it out. Because me, I get all caught up real early. I fall in love quickly with, and I'm not talking about people, but ideas. Yes. And I fall in love quickly, and then I want it. And then if it's not right, then I get all caught up in my emotions. So God, just remove it. And he's honored it. Yeah. So what I've learned is that
you have to just really be honestly willing to just let it, if you take it, let it go. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And so that leads me to where I am now, in that in a space of being, I'm still in HR. I'm still a pastor, and I started my own business probably about 2 years ago, 2019. And that all came from me writing my first book, helping a sister, 5 critical components to creating global change. And that book was totally about me and what I've dealt with, and how women in my life, no matter who they are, how they've helped me along the way. And then when I wrote the book, got started LLC, and then it was just like, okay. And then I didn't do anything with it. Right.
Okay.
And so, then I found someone. So I've always believed in investing in myself. So I had a coach at the time, and my coach, she said to me, well, what's next for you? So she was my coach as far as leadership. Right. So she said, well, what's next for you? And I said, well, I have this book, and I know there's more, but I don't even know what it is. So she encouraged me to find another coach, and kind of guided me to which way it went. And so I wanted to start speaking more outside of the church.
Okay.
And I started with I said, I spoke at women's conferences for years, but I wanted to do more. And I found a coach to do that. And the coach she's still my coach, she's my mentor. She said to me, have you ever thought about coaching for yourself? And I'm thinking, well, I came to you for speaking.
Yeah.
You're talking about coaching. She said, well, think
That's
about
not what I came here for.
I know, right? I did. I'm like, and my mindset was like, okay, okay. But to have someone to connect the dots, again, transferable skills. You do it as an HR professional. You do it as a pastor. Why not do it for yourself? And when we think about it as a coach, and I look back over my life, going back to as a little girl, people used to come to me, Maxine, what do you think?
Wow. Okay.
Maxine, what's going on? Maxine, can we talk? I mean, we always coached, right? Remember, you get it with your girlfriends and they say, well, I think this and that. And then you start asking questions. Well, what happened with this? Well, what about that? Well, what could we have done different? I've done it all my life. Yeah. So that was the aha moment. And that's when I started coaching and really got into it and started coaching really in my own, December 2020. That's when I got my first clients. And it just kind of went from there. And I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. So that's where I am today. And it's exciting. It's exciting.
Yes. And that's what I share with people is that if you look back on your life and just look at it from a higher point of view and you see what you've already been doing, see who you are, see where you've been, it gives you a clue to who you should be or what you should be doing. Yeah. Right. That's beautiful. Yeah, exactly.
And we see it in our children, but we can't say anything because like you said, those millennials, you can't say it. You can't say anything, but I see it. I see. So I'll use my youngest son as an example. My youngest son, teachers used to say, he's so manipulative. He's so this. And I was like, well, is he manipulative or he's strategic? He's a leader. He's 10 steps ahead of you. As a teacher, you need to get about 15 steps ahead of him. But guess what? Now he's in management. My oldest son, he always wanted to do and give and make sure everyone's okay. He's like the kind of kid. Now they're 30, 33 and 28. So I'm saying kid because they're still our kids, right?
Right. They're grown, but they'll always be our kids. Yeah,
exactly. He says, he always wanted to do right by someone or help someone if they were in need. But now he's helping. He works in the school system and he helps children that have behavioral problems. He said, Mom, this wasn't my highest paid job, but it's the most rewarding.
That's the key.
Yes. So you start to see it in our own children. Sometimes we don't see it. We don't look in the mirror for ourselves.
Right. We don't. Yeah. Yeah. We get in the cloud of what other people think that we should be best at to do. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So how did God get into your life and into this situation? Did you go to church as a young person or was it a revelation? Was it a moment? Did you hit a cliff and fall in it? And then like some people just climb out trying to find God because they have no other choice. How did that happen for you?
I did grow up in the church per se. My parents, I call them, were CME Christians. They only went to church for Christmas, Mother's Day, and Easter.
Okay.
Because grandma said, we're having a special service. I want to see everybody there. So we all went.
Yeah, we've got an auntie like that. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Christmas, Mother's Day, and Easter. Because you want to make grandma proud, especially Mother's Day, to have all her children and the grandchildren all in, right? So that's what we did. I didn't really go to church. I had a really pretty, I'll say, even though as a young mom, and I really enjoyed going to parties. I mean, I would have a cousin that was old enough to watch my children. So I would say, hey, can you come over for the weekend? And I would just party. But then it was a point where I was just like, it's more to life than this. And my cousin said to me, she stayed in the church. And, but it was funny because she would say to me, all right, girl, I got to go because I got to go to church tomorrow. I'm like, what? Sunday is sleep day. Like, you're going to church?
That's rest, literally, physical rest. Yeah.
Right? Sunday is sleep day. Sleep, and then you get up and clean the house. That's what you do. But she went to church. And so one time she said to me, why don't you just come to church with me one Sunday?
Okay.
It was my cousin.
Okay.
And I always thank Nicole to this day. And I always tell her, and every time we talk about it, we get teary-eyed. And I went to church and I never stopped. And at that time, my pastor was a female. And sometimes God gives you the message right for you.
Yes.
And she started talking about how, you partying, you're doing this, you're trying to find what's out there to something to fill the void, but it's God. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's talking about me.
Yes.
And it just went, and that was it. And she went from there. And she's my spiritual mom to this day. And I talk to her from time to time just to check in. And I kept going, and I kept going to church and joined the ushers ministry. And that's where I wanted to stay. I was like, okay, this is cool.
Yeah.
This is cool. But God called me to more. And I just had people in my life that saw that. And I didn't understand being called to pastor. I didn't understand it.
Okay.
So I just had guidance along the way. And so I said yes. And here we are.
Okay. It was another one of those moments where they were like, I think that you would be good at this. Yeah.
Yeah. Or because I didn't know what was happening. It was just like, I don't know what's going on. Like it was a weird space. And I'm like, why am I at church crying all the time? My son's like, why are you crying? I was like, I don't know. And my pastor said, I think God is calling. I'm like, calling me to what?
To do what? Yeah.
I'm here. Like, I'm here. But what happened, my pastor said to me, God will make it so clear to you as to what he wants of you that no one has it. Because I was never, my pastor changed. So I was never told by my pastor what that calling was. It was God who made it so clear to me.
Got it.
And that's how that all came about.
That's fantastic. I love when it happens that way, because then it's not me who thinks I'm great at talking, so I want to lead a church, and then you force your way through the water going the other way.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yes, exactly. No, it's truly a calling. When I tell people, they're like, wait, your church is 2 hours away, so it was 4 hours out of my day. Well, maybe whatever. That's a calling.
Yes. Yeah.
You don't do it for the money.
No.
You do it because God said. And I remember I was traveling to my first church. It was in Harrington, Delaware. And I was angry. Julie, I was angry. I'm sitting there after a while. I was just like, this doesn't make any sense. I passed about 5,000 churches, and God, you called me down here. And I'm just fussing the whole ride down. I mean, I had jokes from friends. Like, you could prepare like 15 sermons on your drive down. Like, I was so irritated.
Yes.
But what God said to me was, he said, this is not about your convenience.
Oh, wow.
And I was
ouch.
Like, exactly. So I shut up.
Yeah.
I had nothing else to say.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when you hear that, it's, what argument do you have?
Nothing. This is right.
So tell us how you found your coaches. And were there other mentors that you didn't seek out that helped you to get to this place you're at now?
Okay, so I'll answer the first part, how I found my coaches.
Yeah.
One, honestly, I'll say some of them social media. So some people that I've been following.
Yeah.
I see what they did, and I would follow them, and I was like, okay. So I had male coaches. I used to tell my husband, if you hear me talking on the phone early in the morning with the mail, it's so-and-so, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. I keep everything above board. That's so-and-so.
That's right.
Doing a check-in. But every time it's like, all of my coaches, and this is what I've learned, they will always ask the same thing, what's next of you? And then when I realized what was next, and that's a part of coaching, pulling out what is really next of you.
Yeah.
Some I found that I knew, and I knew them not on social media, but I knew them personally. Mm-hmm. And I asked her, what did she do? And we worked for the same, we worked with the same, and we were in the same organization. Yeah. And I saw what she did as far as leadership within the organization. And I asked her and just said, this is what I need. This is what I'm looking to do. Are you able to help me? And that happened with that one. The other, my coach and mentor now, I found her on social media. And all of this, I will say, Julia, is that I really prayed about it. It's like, this is what I need. This is what I'm looking for.
Okay.
And that's how it came about. Have I had mentors? All my life I've had mentors, whether it was my track coach. You didn't call them mentors. It was your coach, right?
Right.
Teachers. And now I'm really intentional about having mentors and coaches, and whoever. So I believe in having a team. Mm-hmm. And I say that team is, besides your family, but who's around you that's going to support you.
Yeah.
So for my team, besides your physician taking care of your physical health, your spiritual health as a pastor, one of my spiritual mentors, she and I spoke this week, and I'm like, let's continue on. So to be my spiritual director, or, to in that way.
Yeah.
So spiritually, because I'm a pastor and I need to be fed, I need that intimacy and all of that.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. I have my mentor, I have my coach as far as business. I have a therapist. I tell people I'm not ashamed to say it. We got to talk about it. I need somebody to say, yeah, I want to punch them in the face, and they'll kind of talk you down and talk you off the ledge.
Yes.
So you have to have that good team around you to support you, because you're supporting everyone else.
Yeah.
And that's so important. And I this is my motto. And this is what I say. We know the phrase, you can't pour from an empty cup, but you also can't pour from a dirty one.
Right.
And the dirty cup is that all that residue that we have, that we hold, and we're still pouring, then that comes out in resentment. That comes out with an attitude. That comes out in so many different ways, or emotions, or as we say, from you bleed on the people.
Yeah.
Because you never cleaned out your cup. So once you have that team around you, it kind of keeps you centered and keeps you going. Because if I need spiritual, I need that, I know who to go to. Coaching or mentorship regarding business, I know who to go to. And even within, I'll say, the HR profession, I know who to go to. So it's just having those, I'm just picturing like a circle, and just having all of those dynamics to say I'm in the center. And of course, God is around it all.
Yes. Yeah. Have you ever had a bad spiritual advice? I'm just curious, because sometimes people really want to help you, but it's not biblically based. It's more opinion or my experience. So I'm wondering, at your level, how do you deal with that? And do you see it coming? Or when you get advice, do you just sort of go back to the Bible and say, okay, let me pray and see if this is really for me?
Yeah. I haven't had, I'll say, not bad spiritual advice per se.
Okay.
Because I take things, and I think this is a part of my, like, those who are around me spiritually, how I've always been, I'll say, taught or trained, is that don't take my word for it, seek for yourself. That's why we have to learn the Bible for our own understanding, right?
Yeah.
And I teach the same thing.
Okay.
I could be wrong sometimes or misquote it. It's not that people make mistakes.
Yeah.
But I will say one thing I'll say that I've learned is that sometimes we take, I'll say, things that the people outside of, I'll say, faith-based, and take it to heart.
Okay.
For example, I was in church, and I was a leader. Now I'll say it's kind of bad spiritual advice, but I had to really, I won't say, I had to say that doesn't make sense.
Right.
And they're a leader in the church. And I said to them, I put my pocketbook on the floor. And he said to me, he gave me my pocketbook. And I said, why? I said, why did you give me my pocketbook? He said, you shouldn't have your pocketbook on the floor. And I said, I know where he was going with it.
Yeah, I'm feeling it. Yeah.
I said, why not? He said, they say if you don't have your pocketbook on the floor, you're not going to have no money. I said, but where does that say that in the Bible?
Yes.
That's not what we look like. It doesn't say that in the Bible. So I'm going to put my pocketbook on the floor.
Yeah.
I feel comfortable. So I think there's those type of things that happens that we bring into our faith.
Yes.
And count it as a gospel.
Yes.
But you have to question, did God say that, or did you say that?
Yes.
And I think that's something that we need to remind ourselves. Or if someone says to you, I had a situation where someone was giving me gifts, and they were giving me a lot of like gifts. And I won't say it was expensive gifts. They were just giving me a lot of gifts, whether it was food or whatever. And it made me feel really uncomfortable. And I said, you don't need to do that. I appreciate it. And then they instantly was like, "Wow!" Yeah. And I'm like, there's like, God told me to do that. And I said, well, I'm not going to go back and forth with what God said to you, but just honor the fact it makes me feel uncomfortable.
Okay.
Because if something stumbles your brother or your sister, then you shouldn't do it anymore, right? That's what the word says.
That's what the word says, yes.
So that's what I was sharing with that person from that perspective. So I think we just have to really just lean on, not have to, we have to lean on what God says in his word. Yeah. And if we're not sure how the word is interpreted or how to interpret or how to apply in our life, that's when we really have to sit down and spend time with him.
Yeah.
And get rid of all of the distractions and let him just do what he does. And he'll tell us and he'll make it clear. However he does it, it's different for everyone.
Okay. That is so true. I'm glad you said that out loud because I was told the purse thing too. And I started doing it for a while. And then I was like, what are you doing? It doesn't feel faith-filled when you do that, thinking that God's not going to bless me because I put my purse down there low.
I know. It's like we put fear over faith. I'm like,
yeah, that was good that you caught it really quickly. It took me a while. So that's good.
Well, this just happened not too long ago, Julie. This was only maybe about 8 years ago.
Oh, okay.
My grandmother used to tell me that. And I'm like, oh, my grandmom said.
Yes. Yeah. What they say has power. Yes.
Exactly.
So if you met your younger self today, what is one piece of advice you would give her?
Oh, one piece. Oh, that's challenging.
Or you can give her more, but at least one, but you can give her more if there's more.
I would tell Maxine, you won't always get your way.
Okay.
Everybody doesn't always like you, and it's okay to be yourself.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. One that I think we need to hear over and over and over again. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
For some reason, no matter how old you get, you want people to like you. And sometimes you're willing to change a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's okay. Like someone said to me, and especially with African-American women, I'll change my hair. I went from locks to this, to that. Like you'll see me today like this. And then once I work out, my hair is a big curly afro. So I'll go from there. It's like, well, why did you do that? And after a while, we started explaining ourselves. I'm like, wait a minute. And I said, why are you explaining? This is my inner Maxine saying to me, why are you explaining yourself? And so I simply would say, because I want to.
Yeah.
Because I like it.
Very good.
End, period. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's not arrogance. That's just what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Give us some advice from your playbook. I'm going to leave my favorite question for last, which I didn't send you, but I'm going to take you by surprise and see what you say. It's not challenging. It's just a question. So what is the one book you would advise all women to read?
Besides the Bible, of course, but I understand everyone that listens to the podcast isn't all faith-based, and I get that.
Right.
But there is one book that I say, even my sons told me about it. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I already have the book. It's called The Four Agreements. I think it's
yes, very good book. Yes. Yes.
It's and one of the things is to do your best.
Yes.
The other thing that he talks about is don't take things personal. So it just totally resonated with me. It's so simple. It's a quick read. Yeah. And it's so simplified. I think Miguel Ruiz. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Don Miguel Ruiz. That's what it is. Yes. And so The Four Agreements. I think that's such a powerful book. And it just it's so simple and it is practical. And I think that everybody should read it, men, women, young people, because it was interesting when my son shared it with me. Yeah. And I said, I already have the book. I didn't even realize you guys were into it. And we all agreed. It's a great book.
It is a great book. Yeah. 4 or 5, I think there might be complete practicals that you need to just read over and think over and watch yourself and see how you act. And
Exactly.
Yeah. That's a good one. And you wrote a book. You mentioned your book, 5 Critical Components to Creating Global Change, but it sounds like there were more. So tell us about either all of them, your latest one. Just tell us about those.
Yeah. So the title of the book the head title is Helping a Sister is 5 Critical Components to Creating Global Change, Global Communities of Change. And it talks about see, it's just like symbols like see, care, share, and change. And one of the things I talk about is, I'll say, for instance, sharing or caring or seeing is, a lot of that is what we see in ourselves or how we see ourselves. Sharing is sometimes, as women, we want to, say I'm a superwoman and do everything.
Yes.
I got it.
Yeah.
I don't need no help.
That's right.
But when the rubber hits the road, or when your back is up against the wall, you have to share what's happening, what's going on, to get that help, to give that one example. So I share it from those perspectives and my experiences in those areas.
Okay. Yes. We do try to carry all those baskets on our shoulders and act like we're good. I know I have one woman in my life who's good, but you can look at everything that's happening in the body and you can say, yeah, I don't think you're good.
Yeah.
This is my own personal moment to get my own advice from you. How would you attack that or address it? So it's somebody who's just good. They don't take critical advice very well, but you sense that they need it. How would you approach that person? Now, this person is somebody close in your life. They're not going anywhere. They're always going to be there, family member. So how would you approach that?
So I just want to make sure someone that's close to me and that they need some feedback.
Yes.
But they're not necessarily open to constructive criticism.
Right. And then they're in a hard spot. So you have that feeling like the wrong push could tip them either a good way or a bad way. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I would set it up in a sense of, if you don't mind, can I share something from the heart? Or if you don't mind, share something that I see.
I'm writing it down.
And so I would start that way.
Yeah.
Because it kind of sets it up to say, this is hard. Or I may say too, this is hard for me to say, but because I love you, I need to say it.
Very nice. Yes.
And then go into that.
Yeah. Oftentimes it's the setup, because then they don't resist.
Exactly.
Getting past the resistance. Yeah.
It's always the setup.
Yeah.
And even to give them that space, because pausing and giving them that space is always essential, because people need to take in what you're saying, to give them that space to say, after you say what you have to say, just have that silence.
Yeah.
And give them that space. And it's not like, okay, that's all I have to say, bye.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's just allowing them that space to give you feedback, allowing them that space, even if there is resistance.
Yeah.
Allowing them that space just to take it in, and you still showing support out of love. And that could even happen in a sense of, is there anything that I can do to help you?
Yeah. Okay. I love that.
Yeah.
Very good practical. Nice way to start. And then you see how it goes from there.
Exactly.
You were a single mother for a short period of time. What was your biggest lesson from that period of your life? Because, being a single mother is no joke. I don't know. I was one for a short period of time. And I tell you, that's the one thing, even before it happened, I never wanted to do.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you think, what do you think your biggest lesson from that was?
That was the part around asking for help.
Okay, good.
That was my biggest lesson, is that I didn't ask for help. I didn't, because I had something to prove to the ex.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was a me thing. And my children, my sons were hurting from that.
Okay.
And I do believe that God put people in my life to kind of reach out to say, like, I had a guy I grew up with in the neighborhood, and he said to me, hey, Maxine, listen, bring your boys up to such and so on this date. And I'm like, for what? He's like, just bring them up. I trusted him. I did. That was how my son started their athletic career. I would say, well, my youngest son was football. My oldest son was basketball. So that whole, I'll say, generational tradition of keeping your children active in community. Yeah. Passed on to my children. But a part of that, not asking for help, that was the biggest lesson, because I found like I couldn't do all this. I had one son that had to go to football. The other son had cross country. One son had track. The other son had basketball. How am I going to get them all to these games and things with one car?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
asking for help.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, because I feel like the hardest parts of our lives, there's something we learn, and it's nice to see that the lesson came out of it. So you're not just like, well, I had to be like this and I had to do that. It's not one big sad story. It's, wow, look what I learned.
The biggest thing that's the point, Julia. We have to look at the lessons and not the losses.
Yes.
Some of us focus too much on loss.
Yes.
Oh, I'm divorced. Oh, he left me. He left me with these children. Oh, these children are going. So these children are doing this. And well, what's the lesson in it for you? So
Yes.
as single mothers, and as, of course, for me as a coach, and I coach leaders,
Mm-hmm.
that developed my leadership skills.
Yeah.
It totally develops your leadership skills. You
Right.
learn how to delegate. You learn about change management. You learn how to engage. You learn to be an empathetic listener. Why? Because it's just you and your children.
Yeah.
They teach you the best. And and I always say it's such a blessing. And my sons say, you know what? We went through some rough times, but it was a blessing. And we sit around and we can laugh about it. We can talk about it. And that's the beauty in it all. And I don't regret any bit of it, because it made me the woman that I am today.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when you counsel or when you coach leaders, what do you help them with? What do they come to you most for? And what is their greatest challenge, do you think, if there is one? It might just be an individual. I don't know.
I think coaching leaders, particularly what I find the more senior they are,
Mm-hmm.
the more challenges that they have with dealing with conflict within their teams, departments, and other leaders.
Yeah.
Because there's an expectation to have a senior leader to see that there are leaders that are below them that are not meeting those expectations, and they have to confront conflict. Okay. So a lot of that is around conflict resolution and how to navigate that. Because again, if you're a chief whatever or a senior leader, you're on a C-suite, you don't have time for that. So they're always looking for things to say, how can you help me, or what should I say?
Okay.
And how do I deal with that? And what I find, particularly when you're dealing with clinicians and scientists, everything's like, well, what if?
Yeah. They're still in that mode of, investigation and discovery. Yeah.
And I'm really authentic. And that's what I was like, wait a minute, this is not a part of research.
Right.
There's no what ifs. Let's just do it one thing at a time. But the point is that you can get through this, and here are some talking points. And I will give them talking points. But again, what prepared you for that is when we look back over our lives. It's a whole group of girlfriends, and two of the girlfriends aren't speaking. Well, why aren't they speaking? And then you kind of walk through that. Or if you're on a team and something happens with the relay team, so we got to get along to get that baton passed. So that's conflict resolution. I mean, you can look at every facet of our life and say, yeah, we dealt with it there, we dealt with it there, we dealt with it there. Yeah. And I can even look at like situations even with my ex-husband, conflict. There's no conflict. Okay. What's the problem? Okay, let's solve it. Let's move on.
And move on. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, gosh, what did I want to ask you next? Something came to my mind. This always happens to me when I'm listening. Give me a second. Oh, yes, that's what I wanted to ask you. What is next for you? Tell us what you're looking forward to. Projects, workshops, whatever you're doing next. What's next for you? I know your coaches ask you that all the time, so you must be ready for what's next.
How did you know, right? There's an expectation. So what's next for me is regarding my coaching or speaking. So I've been have a couple of well, let me back up. I'm getting too excited because I'm running I'm running through my calendar. Yeah. What's big and what's next for me? I have a large speaking opportunity that's coming up, but I can't say it just yet.
Okay.
But as I'll share where you can stay in touch with me, it'll come in its due time. Yes. And so I'm preparing for that. So I'm super duper excited about that. The other thing is I am working on my second book.
Okay.
And it's simply entitled, I Am a Wife, a Woman Influenced, Focused, and Empowered to Lead. And so I'm working on that. That is coming out. I was proposing for late spring, early summer. That's the timeline for that. And also I have a webinar coming up in mid-March, I believe, and I'm looking at the calendar. That's for February calendar, so I can't see it. But in March, it's called Position and Poise, and it talks about different leadership facets and how you can transfer those skills that you already have, because we know leadership is not about role, it's about what you do. And so we talk about that. So that's coming up in March. And that webinar / masterclass is absolutely free. And it's about an hour, because I get it. We're all busy and pretty much zoomed out. So it's here's some tidbits for you, and take that with you and just go out and just be influential in the world.
Okay, good. And as you're on this topic of getting in touch with you, can you please share with the audience how they can get in touch with you after this podcast is over?
Yeah. The easiest way, if you are on Instagram, you can follow me on Instagram at Maxine L. Johnson. Okay. That's Maxine L. Johnson. Or if you're not on Instagram, you can reach out to me at info at MaxineLJohnson.com. That's my email. Okay. Or simply go to www.MaxineLJohnson.com.
Yes. So get in touch. We'll stay in touch. We want to know when that free workshop, at the very least, so we can engage with you on that.
Absolutely.
So I have two more questions. One, I just want to get a peek into your life and tell us there's one thing that you have to do every day.
Pray.
Okay. Why?
It centers me. It helps me be still. When I say pray, it doesn't mean that I'm just simply just talking to God, like, oh God, I am being still.
Okay.
And just being still and being in the presence of spirit, of Him. Being in the presence, and it, because it's calming, it sets your day. And the reason why, and it's there is such a sacredity in the silence. There is such security in silence for me. There's such comfort. There's such hope in the silence, and having those silent moments. And just letting Him pour into you. So prayer is important to me. So I'm always pouring something in prayer, affirmations, and just being still. That's important to me. And whether affirmations, they are not always scripture. They are just statements that I say to myself, because I believe and follow death and life is in the power of the tongue. And whatever we speak, that God honors it, because He's my daddy, as I said from the beginning. I'm a daddy's girl. So even though my dad on earth is no longer here, I'm still a daddy's girl, and He still honors me and honors what I say. Because sometimes He say, "No, Maxine, sit down, not yet." And I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Yes. No, that's not easy. You make it seem easy to say, yeah, okay, but it takes a strength and a trust and a faith to get to the point where when He says no, you're like, all right.
It's that part, because a lot of the no's came with me reverting back to that little girl saying, "Dad, why not?
Yeah.
Dad, what?
Yeah.
When?
Yeah. But you're not listening to me.
Right. Dad, I'm asking
what I want.
Time.
Yeah.
Dad, I'm asking one more time. Maybe the way I asked it the first time. So
you didn't really understand, or maybe I didn't make it clear. Yeah.
I didn't make my case. Right. Yeah. So I would go back, and I found myself doing the same thing. Yeah. And now every step is just like, okay, God, I trust you. Because what happens is when He says no, it was me getting my way again. And so reverting back, and I had to understand that. Are you going to trust me or not? Okay. Yeah. Okay. I yield.
Yeah. Or else He's like, okay, Maxine, or okay, Julia, just go that way then. Maybe you'll come back after you're done. We're going to go through this again. You can just imagine. Yeah. Yeah.
So one thing that, Jesus will tell us He likes us to be childlike. Yeah. And when we receive that, because sometimes we get away from that, but it's a good thing, especially when you have a relationship with God. Because even if when I can be childlike, it's not a bad thing. Okay. I think it's a thing of me just being honest, so honest and open with God to say, God, I really don't like that answer.
Yeah.
I'm not feeling that answer.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel good, but it does build your faith, because He does show you, I'm still here. I heard you, but it's not time yet. Yeah. And that's what that's what He does with me. As I said, it's different for everyone else, but He has told me no or wait. And I'm like,
yeah, this
is me. Well, when? well, what, are you still here? Are you hearing me?
Yeah.
Are you listening? And he does something to show that he is.
Yeah. Yeah. That's wonderful. Yeah. Sometimes you just got to wait. You just got to wait.
You do. Yeah.
So one last question. Maxine, God has come to you and said, okay, this is it for you. This is the last day that you'll be here, but I'm going to give you a platform to give a message to the world. What is the one thing you would want to leave with the world? The one message?
Oh, that's so good. Oh, Julia, that's a good one. If only we all can trust him. And to walk in faith and not in fear.
Yeah.
He doesn't give us the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind.
Yes.
To love all of us, to love your neighbor as yourself, and to love him with your whole heart, soul, and mind. So I would just share that because it does give you peace, and it does bring about peace.
Yes.
And it gives you peace within yourself.
Yeah. Just had a vision of you on a mountain and the world listening. And at that moment, wars ended, fights ended, abuse ended, neglect, fear, sadness, hunger, thirst. If we could just hear that message.
Yeah.
Drop the mic.
Yes. And I that's why I saw the visualization. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Hopefully this will just they'll hear it right now. Wouldn't that be amazing? Please, God. Don't tell them.
Yes. That's the whole part. That's why that's why your platform is such a blessing, because to share, and that you don't have to be all super duper or religious or anything, but when you know that there's someone that's bigger and greater than you, that doesn't reside here on earth.
Yeah.
That's the start to say, there's someone greater than me that can make change, but we got to trust him to do so. And I'll say this last piece. The one thing that came to me a couple of days ago was I listened to the radio, and at the end of the radio commentator, he said, peace, right? And a lot of people end, but what happens is years ago, people used to always say peace out. Remember that?
I do.
And I used to say, no, stop saying it. And here we are, not to say that things won't happen. Yeah. But I'll say, especially like we're telling no more peace. Yeah. So we have to be careful what we say. Yes. So I as I said, I bid peace and blessings to everyone, even you that's listening.
Thank you. The listeners too. Me too.
Yeah. I said you and you and you and you who's ever listening. Yeah. That I bid peace and blessings to all of the women and even men, whoever is listening, because that's what we need more of. And love, just sharing peace, love, and blessings to everyone.
Yes. Yeah. And if you share it with me and I share it with you and they share it with them and we share it with us, everybody's got peace, blessings, and love.
Exactly.
It's that difficult and that simple. Yeah.
Exactly. I love that. Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Maxine, for being here. This was an amazing discussion, and I could just go on because I have millions of questions, but thank you for spending this hour with us. Thank you for your advice and sharing your life. It was amazing.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much, Julia, for this opportunity. I am so grateful because everyone doesn't ask you to be on their platform. So I appreciate the opportunity.
You've been listening to the F50 Woman podcast. Join the F50 Woman movement and this diverse group of voices to help change the world one woman at a time. Why should you join at your age? Because we're not done yet.